Hi everyone, welcome to Gig Harbor, Washington, where the anchor all began. We are standing here in front of a net shed, and for those of you who don't know what a net shed is, our town is an old fishing community, and back in the day, the fishermen would come off the water and bring their boats in and bring their nets into these net sheds to be repaired and get equipped and just get a little rest off the water. So we thought, what a great analogy for the anchor where it first began is this place where women of all ages can come to gather and be together and be restored and be encouraged. So we are excited right now to announce that this month we are going to begin to share an anchor moment with you. And an anchor moment is a time in your life when your faith has really been grounded and you've seen God at work for real. And we are thrilled that we are going to be able to share with you stories from women of all kinds of backgrounds and all ages, and our hope and prayer is that you would be encouraged.
Hi, I'm Vanessa. I'm 23. I live in Tacoma, Washington. I'm originally from Oregon, and I kind of moved up here when I was 5, so I like to tell people I'm a PNW girl at heart. I love social media. I love clothes, probably a little bit too much, but that's who I am. And I love coffee and hanging out with my friends. So just a little bit of background. I've grown up in the church. My mom was always in ministry. I was like that little kid just running through the pews and crawling on stuff and always getting in trouble. And my dad was a youth pastor growing up, so I've always been exposed to Jesus and was baptized when I was 5. So I have 2 younger siblings. My parents put us in Christian school, and so growing up I just kind of had a little bit of a sheltered view of the world, and obviously, they thought that was best for me at the time. But I remember when I was about 12 or 13, my parents decided that my mom was going to go back to school. And then because of that, private Christian school can be very expensive. So they decided that I was going to go to public school. I was also taking care of my little brother and sister at that time because my dad had to work more to support my mom going back to school. So through that, I kind of started to get this mentality that I had to take care of everybody else. And so growing up, I had a relationship with the Lord, but it was more of a like, oh, I love Jesus, and it was more of kind of like a box that I checked. And so that was kind of my relationship with him throughout high school, and I loved him, and I was, on the worship team, and I kind of started to find like love in places that probably weren't the best, because I had a grasp of, oh, this is what it means to have a relationship with Jesus, is to love him and then find love from other sources to kind of, make you feel good. And so throughout my life, I kind of just had this cycle of trying to just be the best at everything. Like I wanted to be the prettiest, I wanted to be the most popular, I wanted to have the best voice, I wanted to be the best musician. My parents always call me like, oh, Vanessa was the golden child, And I for a while, like that was just who I was. That was my identity, I was the golden child. Of course, one of those things that kind of I used to fill that, that need to just please people in my heart was my relationships with boys. And everyone in my family gets married very, very young. And so I would get into these relationships and they would last like a year and a half. And then all of a sudden, when it got to a point where I was like, oh, I have to actually be more vulnerable, I would just like run away. and I would just kind of like break this boy's heart and just call it good, and I would be completely fine. And I think my anchor moment, and a moment that really solidified my faith. So when I was in high school, I was dating this boy, and we had been together for almost 2 years, and I would say he probably was the love of my life. And both of our faiths were a little iffy, and he decided that he wanted to propose to me, and I didn't know this at the time, and I just got scared, and I broke up with him and broke his heart and ended up just kind of blowing him off, and didn't think too much of it. And then 2 or 3 years went by, and I kind of, at this point I was 19 or 20, and I had moved out of my parents' house, and I ended up getting to a different relationship that lasted for like a year and a half, and thought that my life was good, and we got engaged, and we were engaged for a few months, and I had kind of my whole life set out before me, and I had gotten to this point in my life where I was like, he made a lot of money, I was gonna have this perfect house, this perfect wedding, and all these things that I finally had made it, and I was like, oh, this is the best of the best. This is everything that I've ever wanted, but I still felt so empty, and I still felt like maybe this isn't all it's cracked up to be. It was 3 or 4 months before I was supposed to get married. This was April, and we were supposed to be married in July. I started getting these really weird dreams. I had the same dream 10 days in a row, and in this dream, I was getting ready, and I was, in my wedding dress, and the boy that I had broken up with 2 or 3 years prior was in the back of the room, and he was calling me over, and he was like, come here, and he would grab my face, and he was like, you don't want to do this, you don't want to do this. And I would go, and I was like, you're right, I don't, and I'd pack up my stuff, but I would always wake up before I made a decision about what I wanted to do. And I had the same dream 10 days in a row, and it just kind of was so bizarre to me because I hadn't talked to this boy in so many years, and it was just like out of nowhere, and I was like, why is this happening right now, right when I'm gonna get everything I want, like this is just not, this is not what's supposed to happen. This is not in my plan. And I had these 2 choices in front of me of, okay, I can ignore this, even though this might be, Jesus trying to get my attention, or I could ignore this and kind of go with, my perfect life that's laid out before me, or I could trust Jesus and take a leap of faith and say, maybe this isn't the relationship I'm supposed to be in, and ask, okay, Jesus, what are you trying to show me? Why am I having these dreams? What is there something that I'm missing? And I ended up choosing to end the relationship and end my engagement, and it definitely wasn't easy. I fell into a really deep depression, and it was like when you have a Jenga tower and you take that one block out, and so many things that I thought in my life were just so solid just fell apart all at once. And I had realized I had spent so much of my life just like making my own plans and building things up and trying to be the best in everybody's eyes, because I was so afraid of actually receiving the love that God had for me, instead of just, making myself be okay with what the world had to offer me. And so after I made that decision to end that engagement, I got really angry at God, and I just kind of became a completely different person. I developed a really bad shopping addiction. I was getting drunk all the time. I was blowing off my family. I was blowing off my friends. I was just so angry because I was like, God, I thought I heard from you, and now my life is ruined, and so I blame you, and this is all your fault, and my heart's broken, and I'm never gonna recover from this. And I was just so angry and so bitter, and I just closed myself off. And I feel like me and God have a really funny relationship, because whenever I'm like, I don't want to talk to you anymore, he just kind of corners me somehow. And he just knows me that way. I'm pretty stubborn. And so what had happened was I was just in this place of just, this endless cycle of not eating, not just drinking alcohol, being angry. And I ended up getting COVID. This was in 2020. I ended up getting COVID, and I had to be quarantined by myself in a basement for 2 weeks on the day that I was supposed to get married. And so I had COVID, and I was alone, utterly alone, just in this basement by myself for 2 weeks. And I felt like that was where the Lord really met me. And I just remember just sitting there on the floor, just bawling my eyes out and just asking the Lord, why me? Why? God, do you see me? Do you love me? Do you care about me? And he was like, do you trust me enough to let me write your love story? Do you trust me enough to learn how to accept the love that I have had for you this whole time, instead of settling for counterfeit love that the world has to offer you? And it was in that moment where I was like, okay, God, I have this much trust that you're gonna come through, but I'm gonna give it to you. And at the time I was unemployed, and the second I got out of quarantine, I got a job. My relationship with my family was restored. I found a place to live with my best friends. And the cherry on top was I actually ended up reconnecting with the boy I had broken up with many years prior. And that's a whole other story for a different time. But the Lord ended up really coming through in that relationship and kind of restoring what we had before. And it's just the best relationship ever, and he really came through. And so that is my anchor moment. One little verse that I think defines my story is from Psalm 116. It's Psalm 116:5, and it says, "The Lord is gracious and righteous. Our God is compassionate. The Lord guards the inexperienced. I was helpless and he saved me. Return to your rest, my soul, for the Lord has been good to you. For you, Lord, rescued me from death, my eyes from tears, and my feet from stumbling, and I will walk before the Lord in the land of the living." So yeah, that's my anchor moment.